Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back.
We're drawing suns.
Or we're attempting to draw a sun.
Yeah, that was like a square,
Hey,
but
it
apparently
was
it
good enough
recognized it as
for the
a
game.
potential sun. This has the potential to be a sun.
I honestly wonder what the coding in this game looks like, because it almost feels like, well, they drew some things.
Yeah.
That's
Could
good
be a
enough,
line.
right?
This could be a sun.
I wonder how much CO2 was blocked in there. My husband recently decided to, I think, like, both of us have this thing where we'll just, like, randomly pick, like, a health topic and just research the heck out of it. And,
Cool.
like,
That's cool.
do things to improve our general health in that area. And so his thing is air quality right now. And so he bought an air quality monitor. We have almost no dust in this apartment. I'd like to think
That's good.
I like to think
That's
that's due to
good.
my cleaning. But now we're monitoring the CO2, and it's like you close a window and the amount of CO2 almost doubles in your house in like
my
half an hour.
goodness.
It's crazy. To be fair though, all my plants are outside because they have kind of this like white fungus on them.
Oh.
Well, it comes from poor air circulation. And so I'm letting them go out, adventure outside, if you will, and get more sunlight because that'll kill the fungus.
Yeah.
I feel like they probably just need to go outside at least once a year to get a heavy dose of sunlight so all the fungus just
Yeah,
dies.
that would make sense.
I go this way, I believe.
But then once you bring them back in, that'll probably bring down the CO2 levels too.
Yeah, well, they're not like that. We consume a ton of CO2 plants, right?
Oh, okay.
Because there's special plants you can buy
That's cool.
to lower CO2 in your house. From what I understand online, though, in office spaces, the CO2 gets so bad around noon that like your ability to pay attention or focus to do work just like decreases, and that's why you frequently get the afternoon lull.
Oh my goodness. So plants.
Yeah, well, plants and just opening a
Particularly-
window
Yeah,
and
sure.
not being around like huge crowds of people.
Yeah.
Especially my office because it's right next to a call center, so
Oh my goodness.
all people are doing is breathing out CO2 all day, essentially. Yeah, I like the idea of modern office space, especially just because, like, there's so many studies backing that when you have a brighter, more open office space, people feel more creative, and feel overall happier there. I forget which comedian, I think it was a Conan show. He went to go visit Intel's office in California, and I'm like 90% sure they like specifically set up the office to look as sad as possible just to add to the comedic aspect of the show. But you walk down the hallways and it was just like he turned to the person who was supposed to be his tour guide, I guess, and he was like, I like these gray walls. They go really well with this gray carpet that you chose, and these like gray details that are also sitting on the wall. And you're just like,
Oh,
wow, that's
no.
so sad. I'd hate working there.
Yeah.
I like the old warehouses that have been converted to office spaces that have like super tall ceilings and steel beams
Those
and
do
like
look cool.
wood flooring. Really goes with my aesthetic.
It does.
Cough, cough. Rest in peace, foul beast. So now that you can read again, Mo, what book is on your list?
I think the one I really want to read is, gosh, what is it called? There's two. One I really want to read is called Mad in America, and it's kind of an analysis of the historical maltreatment of people with mental illness in America. And the second one is, it's actually more of a textbook, but it's on a topic I'm super interested in. And I am forgetting the name exactly, but it's something like, I'll have to go look this up later. It's like the fragmented personality states of like people with trauma or something like. Butchering the name of this, I can put it in.
I just clipped
later.
all the way through that ball. I don't know. We can show it in post, Mo
I
or
know.
Nora.
I can't remember what the name is.
No, I don't mean the book name. I mean like me clipping through that ball while you were talking and looking over at me. I was paying attention though. I just saw that and I was like, well,
did not even notice
that's
that.
interesting.
That's so
I'm on the
funny.
other side of the ball now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, those sound really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the theory is that people with like developmental trauma, so trauma that happens in early childhood or some point in like key development, end up with like, it's not like multiple personality disorder, but it's like different personality states that might not necessarily be, they might not be super connected to them, so there might be parts of themselves that they're like not connected to, if that makes any sense. I have not read the book, so I'll update you when I have read the book.
It's weird to me that there's a notion that there could be a part of you that you're not connected to. That just seems counterintuitive, right?
I mean, maybe.
I mean, is it really a part of you if you're not connected to it?
I don't know. I'll let you know when I read the book.
Okay, cool. Define these terms for me, Mo. I need to know what they mean.
I don't know. It's just like a topic that like our program didn't touch on a lot, so it's more of a textbook, but I think it'll still be.
Wait, you mean your graduate program of study didn't touch on any of the topics you were interested in studying?
No, it did touch on some of them, but it's more like, it's still a pretty roundabout program. You know what I mean? So like, we covered, the goal was to cover everything from like birth to death, basically, which is just a lot. So
yeah. And no one specializes in human life entirely.
Yeah, it's like you kind of have to pick your focus in it.
Yeah.
But we definitely
pick your battle
did
of
talk
which
a lot
life.
about,
Part of life.
We definitely did talk a lot though about like developmental trauma, mostly because that's an emerging field. So like understanding how trauma even can shape your biology, and it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I was reading an interesting book. I don't know where it went. I think I left it at my husband's family, parents' house. But it was discussing, well, it was basically a neuroscientist that was criticizing the notion that women and men had different brains. And she was like, you can scan them and see differences between them, but we don't know what those differences mean, so we shouldn't draw conclusions of that because we really don't know much about how the brain operates.
Yeah, that's also just like neuroplasticity means that the brain shapes itself in response to its environment.
Yeah.
So like, can you give me an example from the book of like a difference in sex that they like?
Well, one was like
about?
the focus on the frontal lobe was a pretty big one. I can't remember which gender they said it was larger for. The interesting thing was she did an analysis of this form of science that's not dead, where you would measure the head.
Oh gosh.
And try to draw conclusions about it. That science hasn't existed since what?
This was so bad.
Racist Germany,
they
basically.
Were just like, only white dudes have good brains.
Yeah. And she was like, it's funny because they didn't do any analysis on the brain directly, right? It was pretty much all external to the brain. Because, there has to obviously be, a relationship between the two. And so they made measurements of heads and saw that men's heads were larger than women's. So they were like, well, their brain's larger.
They have a bigger brain.
And so they're obviously smarter. And then they went back and realized that women's brains actually had more mass to them.
Oh,
and then they were like, well, this doesn't mean anything for women.
Even when...
Yeah, this was an amazing field of science that was completely objective and not subjective at all, right?
Wow.
My favorite critique of science, it is science, has become when people are just like, that's not objective, and I'm like, there's no such thing as objectivity. Next. We've discovered this in philosophy. I don't understand why this isn't a thing in science. So next week during work, we've started doing this thing during our weekly calls where we're supposed to tell one personal detail about our lives. And this week was movies.
That would stress me out so much.
Well, next week is supposed to be.
How do you handle that?
Well, it's just like, what movie do you like?
Just thinking about this. Oh my god.
Like, what song do you like, etc., right? And so next week it's supposed to be what your favorite book is, and I'm just like, I don't know how to answer that question without being like, here is what I like in most genres.
Yeah.
And when I inevitably get to philosophy and it's going to be Nietzsche, everyone's just going to look at me weird and be like, that godless man Nietzsche. And I don't want to get into that very long 40-minute discussion of why that's not the case at all if you read his works and actually pay attention to what he says. Kind of says the exact opposite thing, but whatever. I just remember in high school there was a poster in my one of my teacher's office that was quoting Nietzsche that was like, Nietzsche, God is dead, God, Nietzsche is dead. And I'm just like, do you even know the book that you're quoting that quote from? Because Nietzsche's entire thing was not necessarily that God doesn't exist, but rather Europe is acting like God doesn't exist, but still uses God as a basis for the ethics and their belief system, essentially.
Okay, maybe I need to read some Nietzsche.
Well, Nietzsche's an incredibly difficult read, and like obviously that's just one interpretation of Nietzsche, and there'll be people who offer different interpretations of it.
Drop a comment.
Yeah, if you have any opinions about Nietzsche, like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know how you feel about him. Okay, cool. Yeah, and it's funny because, like, people always ask me what do your favorite philosophers are, and I'm just like, Nietzsche and Kierkegaard. And most people's superficial understandings of the two of them is, like, one of them likes God and the other one doesn't. And I'm just like, it's a lot more complicated than that. He wrote a lot, like, give him a little bit more credit. Probably one of my most favorite books I read recently was I forget what it's called exactly, like the Postmodern Cafe, essentially. And it just talks about, it mainly focuses on Sartre, Comte, I don't know how to pronounce his name, and Simone de Beauvoir and their philosophies.
That's cool.
And it gets into Heidegger a little bit. And for the life of me, I don't understand what that means.
Can't understand Heidegger.
No, like, the author had an entire chapter dedicated to him, and I just, like, reread it 5 times, and I was like, I'm just gonna have to, you know, be happy with the fact that I'll never understand what this man is saying, and learn to live with myself.
I remember reading a little bit of Heidegger in undergrad, and just being very overwhelmed and confused. I remember thinking, like, okay, this guy sounds like he has a point, and it sounds smart, but I am lost.
Well, the weird thing, too, with Heidegger, and this is really trippy, is, like, when you're reading it, and you're like, oh, I think I know it's happening, and someone's like, really? Explain it to me, and you start speaking, and you're just like, give me a moment, I can't put my thoughts together. That is the worst feeling in the world, when you feel like you understand something, and then someone's like, really prove it, and you're just like, tacos are my favorite food.
I like pizza.
And of course they're like somehow an expert in this field too, and they know everything about him, and then you start explaining it, and they're just like, yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
And you're like, okay, I'm just gonna shut up now. Go back and read more books.
And that is sometimes how grad school feels.
Pretty much. Yeah, you find something and you're like, okay, I know this, I can explain this, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna be brave, and I'm gonna bring it up in class discussion, and then you start going, and it's good enough at first to where like everyone in the classroom is like looking at you like, this is gonna be a good point, and then you lose it.
Yeah.
And you just look ridiculous.
The biggest issue for me, honestly, is like I honestly prefer making arguments in written form as opposed to actually speaking them.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, like I microanalyze language enough to the point where it's like every single word matters, and you just can't think on your feet as well as you can like when you're writing something down. I don't know, like I have a lot of respect for the people who feel very confident in the ability to speak and present ideas coherently, just like in public like that, obviously, but at the same time, it's like even those people that are incredibly talented about speaking their ideas, I feel like when you read their works, it's a lot better.
I also just like that if I write something down, I can go back and edit it.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm not stuck on my first draft. Whereas if I say something, I feel like I'm stuck on my first. And
then you inevitably say something stupid, and the other person catches on, and they're just like, "That was an incredibly stupid thing to say." And I was like, "I know, don't come at me like that. I was trying to figure out my ideas
as I was going.
I need to talk this through with myself first." Right. Because how many times do you come back from an argument and you think of 10 things and you're like, I should have said every single one of those things.
I didn't.
Yeah.
And now they think I don't know anything, and I do know things.
Which is why when I'm arguing with people, and like I know people who hate me for this, but whatever.
But whatever.
I won't actually make any points that I defend. I'll just ask people to defend their own points. Because people are not built to be able to defend their ideas, right? When they have to like think on their feet. So they inevitably say something that they don't agree with, or they contradict themselves, and then they end up looking foolish, and then you win.
Wow. Is all conversation a competition to you?
I mean, if I'm not gonna win, what's the point?
What? Just to like be in conversation with other people.
Mo, you know how competitive I am. I once went on a date where we were supposed to be making origami together, and I got competitive with
About
my
the
date.
origami?
Yes.
Leonora. What did Michael do?
What do you mean? What did he do? He was trying to be better at me than origami, and I beat him.
Oh my goodness. Classic. That's actually really funny.
I'm the one who wins.
That's your identity. That's it
Yeah,
right there.
I'm the winner.
I am the one who wins.
Winners win. Okay, should we continue this conversation of how I win everything next time?
Everything apparently. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.